Good morning. I'm going to call to order the Cuyahoga County Equity Commission meeting for March 2022. The time is 10:02. And my name is David Merriman. I'm the chair, and I'm going to begin with a roll call. Representing the Department of Equity and Inclusion, Lenore Lockett.
Here.
Representing the Office of Human Resources, Sheba Marshall.
Here.
Representing Justice Services, Lindy Burt.
Here.
And representing Department of Development, Vaughn Johnson.
Here.
All right, we have a quorum. The minutes have been posted and presented. We'll take a second. Are there any additions or changes that need to be made to the minutes? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Move to approve.
Moved by Lindy. Is there a second?
A second.
Seconded by Vaughn. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes have been approved. Public comment. Is there anyone here from the public that wishes to address the Equity Commission this morning? We have no public comment. We'll move on to opening remarks. I'm going to turn to my right, and I'll ask just Commission from my right to left if they have public opening remarks. Lindy, anything to share?
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Our employee committee continues to meet on a monthly basis. I participated in the stakeholder analysis meeting yesterday and took our own employees' ideas with me to that. It was a great session. I don't know if that was the first one that was held or if there have been others, but it was a really interesting discussion, great questions. So I look forward to seeing how that is integrated into our countywide education program. And that concludes my update at this time.
Thank you. Vaughn?
Yes, thank you. I have a few updates I'd like to share. So as far as internal equity is concerned in the Department of Development, our work continues into the next phase. We're working with Kathy Jackson, and Kathy is working with us to build out 3 different teams in our department to do some equity training and discussion with those groups to build on the work that was previously done. Paul Herdig, Sarah Parks Jackson, and I would not be a part of those particular groups, but we will be continuing our internal equity and interdepartmental work with other leaders throughout the Department of Development. The next one is the small supports grants. The Economic Development and Planning Committee last week approved the resolution for $3 million in small business support grants to organizations that the county supports. And one of the reasons why that support is so critically important is because prior to me coming to the county, I actually was the director of the Minority Business Assistance Center, and I know firsthand how important those resources are to provide technical assistance, lending, especially micro lending, which the county does not do in the Department of Development, and helping those businesses grow. But through the support of the county, when I was at the Minority Business Assistance Center, we were able to provide technical assistance to over 1,000 businesses that led to over $68 million in procurement in the year 2020 during the pandemic. That's the most procurement we had ever done at that particular time, and that's in part to the support from the county. And the last one, I wanted to give an update on the work that we're doing in the city of East Cleveland in assisting them with identifying a financial institution that also will support them with financial education. So I had a meeting with Mayor King, a virtual meeting with Mayor King and his staff, and some others on that call to give them updates on there's 3 credit unions that are still interested in that and expanding into the city of East Cleveland. They're going to continue those conversations with me in the loop on that to really determine what's the best for that particular city. But the good news is there are banking institutions that want to be in that neighborhood, and there's, like I said, there's 3 of them that are queued up and ready to go. And I do want to mention on the small business supports, those grant dollars are specifically, or maybe I'll say primarily, for minority business enterprises and those organizations that support those minority business enterprises. So that's what I have right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Exciting. It's great to hear all the great opportunities that are coming forward. I'd like to share some updates on behalf of the Department of Health and Human Services. Last week, we closed an RFP for housing where DHHS is working differently on many of our initiatives, where instead of having procurements where we seek proposals to respond to a specific funding source or a specific federal or state mandate, we've increasingly been using RFPs to address broad social issues. And so we closed an RFP last week to look at housing needs across all of our population's programs and services. Very excited to see the number of proposals that came into us, some of which we hope to use ARPA funding for, but others might use levy or future funding for. I think that's an example of where I believe we're trying to approach the needs of community differently. We'll be drawing in subject content experts from other areas, and so I'd open up the opportunity to you, or the commission members, if you have staff that you think have either expertise or interest in exploring our response to social problems like housing, please let me know. We are going to be doing a very aggressive timeline to review and to score and bring back recommendations on this RFP. Along those lines, we actually are going to be releasing 3 additional RFPs in the near term. I bring this up because these would not have been included in the forecast that DHHS provided to the Department of Equity and Inclusion. So the first, we hope next week to release an RFP for an emergency child care solution. We've been granted $1 million of ARPA funding from the county executive and county council. There's a well-established need when children are brought to our building, and it will take us more than a day to find a location for them to be placed. We need to develop some sort of temporary housing option for them. So we'll be releasing that RFP shortly. That will be then followed by an RFP probably in the more intermediate time frame, next probably month or two, developing a similar resource that will do a youth diversion service. We hope to be able to divide the populations that are served by us, and at times we have young children awaiting placement with adolescents. Sometimes those adolescents have very serious problems. And so our hope is to develop a diversion center approach, working with Justice Services and the Juvenile Court and others. And more will come on that shortly, but that too would be an opportunity for us to work together. And then lastly, I want to point out there's another RFP that we're working with that is it's a Pay for Success RFP. This is something our county established, being an early implementer of this practice. In this case, we're working with the Ohio Department of Higher Education and the Adjutant General's Office. And the Adjutant General is responsible for the Ohio National Guard as well as other real critical state services. And what we're going to be doing is we'll be releasing an RFP that will present an opportunity for a provider to propose services that we hope to finance using outside investment. And if those services are successful, the county will pay them back with a small return on investment. I bring this up because, it was not included in our forecast, but more importantly, we're going to write into this RFP goals that will address racial disparities in performance of Ohio National Guardsmen that are entering college or a training program. There is a long-standing gap in the number of guardsmen that sign up for college but then don't complete. And frequently that gap is double for minority guardsmen. And so we want to find strategies and solutions that will enable us to support guardsmen to start and finish college and get jobs, but also to address the inherent disparities in performance that exist there. And that would be one that I think there is an opportunity for the Equity Commission and maybe the Citizens Advisory Council on Equity to come and help us develop objectives and maybe even participate in the management of this RFP. That should be coming out shortly. Is there a question?
So on the first one, the housing needs, the RFP is to hire a consultant to do an assessment? Is that what the RFP is for?
Yeah, great question. The housing RFP is actually going to move straight to implementation. So on the housing RFP, we wrote it broadly to address what are the needs of the systems that serve emergency housing, such as the homeless service. So a large component will be we've gotten proposals to renovate our shelters to make the shelters more responsive to COVID and future pandemics. So that will be a large part of the scope. But also inherent in the scope is recognizing we need to do more prevention, more case management, and more scattered site housing. So we're also soliciting responses from, I believe we got responses from community development corporations and other housing developers to say, let's not just focus on the shelter system, let's focus on ways that could stop people from needing to go to shelter or some other emergency housing, or avenues to bring people from those emergency housing solutions straight back to a long-term permanent housing.
So you're requesting information, is that
So these are proposals.
These are proposals.
Yeah,
Oh,
these
solutions.
are proposals.
Okay.
Yep.
And then on the third, the youth diversion, could
Yep.
you just, a few more words about that one?
Sure,
Or,
sure.
Another description of what?
Yeah, I think, there's the county's diversion program, I think, is a critical asset. And what we see is there's similar needs for adolescents. Right now, I think most folks that are teens or adolescents that are experiencing problems are either taken to the detention center or they're taken to
Got it.
DCFS.
Okay, thank you.
And neither place is the right place to serve
Okay.
many of those youth.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep. So my last update is we will be posting the position for our, we may be posting the position for our Division of Contract Administration and Performance. The current DCAP director, Paul Porter, has been nominated to serve as the director of the Division of Contracting and Purchasing. Did I get it right? Is that what we? Department. Yeah. There's too many divisions and departments. I'm sorry. We do. So listen, he's scheduled to be go to the confirmation hearing on Monday. If that is successful and he's confirmed and nominated, I'd have this board know that we intend to repost that position. It's early, but I think it's a critical leadership opportunity. I just would have you know about it. That's all I got.
Good morning, Sheba Marshall from Human Resources. And we continue with our internal HR DEI all-in steering committee. It's going really well. We meet, I think, bi-weekly. I have to get them all straight, but I think we're meeting bi-weekly. And we're talking about the issues as they relate to human resources internally first, and then we're looking to start focusing on how we impact the outside departments, so how we're working collaboratively with the departments. One of the things I brought up to Julie, who's our talent manager, is I want us to start looking at our interview processes on a very basic, very elementary level. When we're interviewing, who's in the room? What does the room of interviewees look like? Because we know that's where it starts when it brings in talent and when we're bringing in individuals to do our jobs and we're looking for them to move forward and through the organization. We need to know first how it looks when we bring them in. Who's the talent in the room, making the decisions to bring individuals in. So we're just having some very basic conversations about that. I'm sure you all have seen the Divine 9 presentation as it related to Black History Month. That was an exciting, Sarah Parks Jackson brought that to the table. That was very exciting to see. If you don't know, it's a group of fraternities and sororities that are made up of the majority of African Americans, started back in the time when African Americans weren't allowed in other sororities and fraternities. They're excellent service organizations. The one Nora and I belong to are over 300 strong women, and they're in every facet of the world, from leadership, having Kamala Harris as the vice president. No, I said at every facet, not us. Yeah, right. She is an AKA, sorry. But having a Divine 9 presence in every facet of the world, starting with our vice president down. And so in our HR DEI presentation, we actually made our own flyer, talked about what that was, what that meant, because sometimes these organizations don't have a good name out in the public, and just having the executive talk about them in February and then to bringing them to our department on a much smaller scale to explain what they were was eye-opening. We're working on now talking about women in leadership and working on our presentation, and we've asked our department if someone would like to share stories. So that's our next goal, is trying to get our stories on a woman in your life that's just made a difference. She doesn't have to be famous as far as being in a public role or anything like that. She just needs to be important in your life, just highlighting women and the roles they play. It could be a grandma who, who taught you how to cook when she was 6 and now you're a cook or a chef or something like that. So we're opening up for those stories. And then continuing, like I said, to look outside of HR and where we can start making that impact on a county level as opposed to just focusing in on human resources. So that's kind of my update.
Any?
I just wanted to add that I kind of stumbled into the Divine Nine video. I have the county set up on my YouTube page as an account. So when I was going through them, I said, the first thing I saw was Sarah Parks Jackson. I said, oh my goodness, what is this? And she had her AKA, logo stuff on or whatever. It was just brilliantly done, magnificent. I mean, it was very emotional for me to see that. There's so many people that I work with that I had no idea that they were in these fraternities and sororities.
We're the same. Yeah.
AKA?
Deltas.
Deltas.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Anyway, I just wanted to say it was brilliant, and thanks for bringing that up. I thought that was a wonderful idea. Whoever put that
It
together,
was
Sarah
so
Parks
much
Jackson.
fun, and I had no idea there were so many individuals and so many levels of organization that were involved in that. So it was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Thanks.
Updates?
Yeah, Lenore Lockett, Department of Equity and Inclusion. A couple of things I wanted to go over. First, equity zone policy. Since our last meeting in January, on February 15th, County Executive Armin Budish approved the equity zones map and policy. And also, since then, several departments have started using the equity zone impacts of the equity zone as part of their selection process. First, the County Planning Commission with their tree canopy program is giving points to projects that directly impact the equity zone. Department of Development CDBG Municipal Grant Program is also providing additional consideration for projects that impacting equity zones. And finally, the Department of Public Works for their County Road 50/50 program is going to be providing points for projects that impact the equity zone. In addition, I'll give a brief update of the training later on in the agenda. The equity scorecard and equity assessment tool, I thought I would have it finished by March. Looks like it'll be April, but we're still working on progress with that. And finally, the GARE survey. We finalized the agreement. We worked with the Race For, which is the actual body for GARE, to work out the agreement terms and conditions of dealing with the COI insurance. So we're at the last phase of getting that agreement before the Board of Control. It's a $0 agreement, so it's more for informational purposes, but obviously at any point they can make any agreement for a discussion and a vote. But that's the final. We're going to sign first, and then finally it'll go to Race Forward for signature. So we're looking at, our timeline was April for the survey, so it might be more late April, early May.
So I have to admit, I have not followed the implementation of the equity zone impact and the points for projects. I feel like that's on me, and so I'd like to follow up and better understand that. But it may also be valuable for us to organize a brief presentation at one of these meetings to be able to present the board, and then also have something on our YouTube page to be able to have others watch it. And so I think when the time is right, that might be helpful.
Yes, definitely.
I would also like to follow up on it, get more information so that I can hand that off to our grants team.
Okay.
That would be great. So is the policy currently, is it
So-
legislated, is it code, or is it, where could I obtain that?
Okay, so a couple of things. We do have an equity zone webpage off the Department of Equity and Inclusion. There's a page that specifically deals with the equity zone. It provides details on the criteria, and there's a link where you can view the map. The policy, there was a decision that was in agreement with County Council. They did not feel it needed to be an ordinance. So I do have a policy that I can share that basically discusses the goal, which is 40%. When you look at the equity zones, they impact approximately by square footage 26% of the square footage of the county. And then by population, the estimate is that it's a little bit above 40%. So our goal is that when you're looking at programs that have a geographical component, that the goal is 40%, which is the in between the 26% by spatial demographics and the 40+% that's by population estimated.
So it's a policy, it's not an executive order either, right? Correct.
So there is an executive order that specifically created the equity zone and states that
Okay.
we are to give
Develop
additional
Got it.
consideration. And then there's a second equity zone. So there was the initial equity zone directive executive order that was issued by Armin last July that said create the map and to create a policy about how to give consideration to the identified equity zones. And then in February, after the creation of the map by internal team, he actually, the executive order approved that current version of the map. Yes.
And Lenora, in the work that you and I have been doing together, I think the presentation that we just discussed will be great to have an opportunity to do that with our staff, especially our ED staff, maybe at one of the staff meetings that we talked about. So once we
Definitely.
get that pulled together, I'd love to have you on the agenda to present the equity zone information.
Yes, definitely, and definitely, we're ready.
Well, and I think to be efficient and good stewards of time, I think if some of us could do this together, I mean, I for one would love to do a meeting with Lindy and her team just to be able to hear this at one time to
Okay.
save the reoccurring and sort of repetitive information. And I always learn from other departments that are also exploring something like this because there's enough differences that we'll probably need to take it back and work on our own implementation, but there are a lot of similarities in terms of the providers we use and the questions we have in using a nonprofit versus a for-profit, and allowing services to be defined by negatives, like negative social problems, as well as instead of the opportunities to change and to fully utilize people. So I don't know. I think if we could get something scheduled, it might be worthwhile having some of us, join it together.
Okay, definitely.
Great. Any other questions for Lenora? Any other opening remarks? So we're going to move now to the College Now mentoring program. I'm seeing that we had, the intent to have somebody present at that.
Presenting virtually.
Oh, great. All right, so we'll move now to a presentation from College Now. So Madeline Reif, the director of the mentoring program, is on with us virtually. And Madeline, thank you first for joining us today. Are we okay with sound? Can you hear us okay?
Yes, absolutely. Can you hear me?
You sound great.
Okay.
So we'll turn it
Wonderful.
over to you. I assume what we'll do is we'll allow you to make your presentation. Would you prefer we ask questions as you go, or would you prefer for us to save questions to the end?
It's going to be pretty brief, so I think if we save them for the end, but if you do have something pressing, just give me a shout.
Sounds good.
All right.
Take it over.
Thank you so much, and thanks for your time this morning. I think I have spoken with at least a couple of you in the room already in individual conversations, which is excellent. But I'm here with College Now and wanted to give you a very brief overview, so please do ask questions. But to kind of set the stage for what College Now does, if you're not familiar with us, we are a local not-for-profit. We are, of course, headquartered in Cleveland, but we have a larger footprint. We are in Cuyahoga County, also in some communities in Lorain, Summit, and Medina counties as well. So we are throughout this greater Cleveland area, certainly Cuyahoga County. And our mission is to increase post-secondary attainment for our clients. So we see our mission very specifically in terms, I'm sorry, my kids are coming down the stairs next to me. We see our mission very specifically in terms of investing in individuals and helping individuals achieve. So similar to what I was hearing some of the programming you're all describing here today. But we also see that in terms of the wider context of helping the greater Cleveland community succeed as well, because we know if you have a certification post high school, you have much better outcomes in terms of your economic capabilities, in terms of your health outcomes, so very important to help people connect to those opportunities. So you see on the screen there, we have three main buckets of work. We do a lot of advising. We advise about 27,000 clients throughout our footprint every year. And we do that primarily through schools, but we also have public facing resource centers throughout our footprint. honey, I can't talk right now, okay? Sorry.
Okay.
And then we also have a lot of help around financial aid and how to pay for those post-secondary programming because that's a huge part as well. So College Now has our own scholarship that we offer to students. We have we have the capacity to serve about 200 to 300 students a year with our scholarship. But we also now partner with Say Yes, so we'll get to that momentarily, but that has really, really significantly impacted our ability to serve local students. And then in addition to receiving a scholarship from us, we also have a mentoring program. And, that's very important because, I think maybe it was Mr. Johnson made that comment about students who are entering college who aren't completing. And that is definitely speaks to our work. That is our main focus with our scholarship and our mentoring program, because it is true. You do see students really struggling if they don't have that financial piece in place, or if they don't have somebody there who has gone through college, who has that sort of knowledge of how to navigate the systems, how to deal with challenges and questions. So that's what the mentoring piece does. It provides our students with those volunteers that can help them in that space, in addition to having that scholarship. So Say Yes Cleveland is a pretty big deal, and I think probably everyone here in this room is familiar, but just very quickly, Say Yes shares College Now's vision, invest in an individual, help them with that educational piece, and then watch outcomes in the community really change and shift. And of course, the county's been hugely important in supporting Say Yes, both coming to Cleveland and launching. We launched the tuition scholarship piece of Say Yes in 2019, and we are also building out the services now that are coming into different schools to support the students. So Say Yes has that vision, you have the scholarship after high school, but you also support students and families all the way through so that students can be students and focus on school and then be fully able to use that scholarship once they graduate from high school. So College Now is involved with Say Yes. We support the scholarship. We also are mentoring all of their students. So I mentioned, we've really thrown the doors open in the last couple of years to serve more of our local students. And we did that. We made that case to mentor because we've seen the impacts in our own program. So we have some numbers here on the screen to run through them quickly. If you're a student from any income background, you have about a 56% chance of graduating in 6 years with a 4-year degree. So all students are challenged here, we're seeing. If you are a student who is in a high financial need category, you receive the Pell Grant from the federal government. That's the population College Now serves with our dollars. That's effectively the population that Say Yes is serving as well in Cleveland, the city of Cleveland. Only 42% of those students will graduate on time. So we're seeing less than half of our students. And when you think about what a college degree means and the opportunities that come with a college degree, just that social economic mobility that's possible. And then when you also think about now we have more than half the students who are entering college who are leaving college with debt, presumably, or have invested time in the very least in pursuing college and were unable to receive that degree. So concerning stuff. If you, again, look at our College Now program, we have the tuition and the mentor support. 70% of our students graduate on time. So we want that to be 100%, but we are seeing that gain from students if you add those supports in to help kind of bridge some of those gaps. So in terms of the day-to-day, how this works, I'm here today because we are recruiting volunteers. We recruit a large number of volunteers every year to work with our students as volunteer mentors. And in order to be a volunteer mentor, you just need to have a 2 or 4 year college degree and the inclination to help somebody. But we are, take you through a few details here. We are a larger program right now. We are 1,700 pairs. Say Yes has enabled us to go from 200 to 300 new freshmen a year to over 1,000 new freshmen a year. Of course, the pandemic has limited us a little bit in our reach. We're getting back into that space, but we will grow, in short, over the next few years. We are a multi-year program, so we fund a student for the duration of college. College Now does, and Say Yes. We're very similar in that commitment. We ask mentors to also work with a student through the course of college. So it is a longer term commitment for people, and we do make people aware of that as they're thinking about the program, considering the program, but we feel it's important for that consistency for a student. The day-to-day, though, is pretty light touch. So it's a longer term commitment, but it's very low intensity. We ask pairs to communicate 2 times a month on a platform that we have so we can connect people without having to share personal information or data or things. So 2 messages on that platform per month, and then 3 meetings a year. And even before the pandemic, we were very much in that electronic space. We wanted people to be able to, communicate when it was convenient. That asynchronous communication is important for students often. And since the pandemic, we've been able to move seamlessly into that virtual space. So we have virtual meetings, telephone meetings, of course, are acceptable. We will go back to in-person meetings one of these days. But it is a very accessible program for people. If they're not able to come to in-person or would prefer not to, they can still participate with us. In terms of the messaging and some of the supports around the program, we realize not all mentors are coming into the work. They might not be first generation college students like most of our students are. Most of our students are students of color. And so many of our mentors are not, which is another reason I wanted to speak with you all today. Just to highlight that need, we are constantly looking for mentors that share more of those demographic overlaps with students. And so, if you're not from those spaces or you're not, as familiar with college ins and outs, we provide you a curriculum you can use, and we help kind of facilitate those conversations. We help mentors really have meaningful conversations with students at specific times as they move through school. So that shouldn't be a barrier for people either, because we do have a lot of support there. Again, outcomes are important as we look at the program. Our student outcomes, 70% graduation rate is really huge. We want it to be higher, but it is really a testimony to how this program is working. And when we survey students, which we do frequently, we ask them, leaving aside the financial piece, what is the importance for this program? Is the program effective for you? 90% of our students say this program is really effective for them. Having that mentor is really important to help with that guidance piece. And when we ask students, more specifically, what is important about this, their answers usually boil down to essentially, having someone there who understands college, who can, give me that insight, and who's there, consistently for me. If I need a shoulder to cry at, if I need a cheerleader, sometimes it's as simple as just being there and checking in. And other times it will be helping a student navigate a question or access a resource or something like that. On the mentor side, outcomes, lots of PD outcomes that we see. Mentors that are newer to the workplace will often tell us it's helpful for them in terms of getting that coaching and mentoring experience. If they're thinking about managing staff on their own, it's a good way for them to start that process. We provide a lot of training and support on that. Also, if you're further into your career, it's just a good way to keep fresh with what maybe an 18 or 19-year-old is thinking, and, keep that connection to that next generation as well. And it's just a great way to pay it forward. I know at the county, seeing your investment as an organization in Say Yes has just been really impressive and humbling for college now to see, a local partner who is really stepping up there. And this is really a crucial piece. If we are investing so much in getting students into college, that's great. But if they don't graduate, which really the deck is stacked against our students in terms of, just that financial background that they're coming from, the first generation background that they're coming from, they really face some significant hurdles. So if we're not, being mindful of that resource, the time that we're spending, the students are spending, is not going to have the same payout because they're not going to graduate. They're much less likely to graduate if we don't support them in other ways. So that 2 emails a month as a mentor is actually really important for helping students, cross that graduation stage. I mentioned already, we are very focused on finding mentors who better represent the experiences of our students. So, anyone with a 2 or 4 year degree can mentor, but we are trying to be a lot more intentional about that. So if, you all sitting in this room, I would personally invite you to think about mentoring, but also if you have networks or your staff at the county, but also, maybe a wider base. Shiva, you mentioned the AKA, I'm actually talking to a group next week that's associated with the Divine Nine, but, if you have personal networks or things that you feel people would be interested and this would be a good fit, please help us spread the word. That would be much appreciated. And then on that point, if you are interested, if you can apply at our website by April 1st, it's a couple weeks, so you have a couple weeks to think about it. But if you apply by April 1st, that will give us enough time to get you through our training and screening process, which is on the screen there. It's a phone interview, a virtual orientation, and then matching happens over the course of this summer, so that in the fall, as students are going off to school, we have pairs established and ready to go. So I know that was very quick, but did anyone have any questions or comments?
I have a question for you, Madeline. You
sir.
mentioned, you used the word certificate or certification a couple times, and I'm just curious if College Now supports this trend of these stackable certifications that are degree equivalent or certifications in the trades or other things like that, because there are many students that don't finish school, but they do finish certifications, and they may have the same knowledge through those certifications that somebody that has a 4-year bachelor's degree. So does College Now support those types of certifications and educational tracks?
We do, although I will make the distinction, the mentoring program is specifically for students on that college 2 or 4-year track.
Okay.
So that those students in that space you would see pursuing a degree. We do see students sometimes reevaluate and choose to, go down a different path, and we help support them in doing that. College Now as an organization, though, we do provide a lot of support for adults who maybe have stepped out of that traditional, school, sort of pipeline, and also high school students who are thinking about, what comes next. Our goal is just that people have a next step post high school, and we want it to make sense for them. So if they do want to pursue college, of course we want them to do that. But if it is a different, it's sort of a different path that they want to take, we have a lot of capacity to help advise them around those as well. So the stackable certificates are definitely in our wheelhouse, but again, you wouldn't see them in this particular space.
Okay. Doesn't Cleveland State, I believe they announced that they have a stackable certificate program that is either a degree equivalent or either it turns into a bachelor's degree? Are you familiar with that?
I'm not
Okay.
actually, and that's really interesting. I will make sure I ask our CSU. We sort of have liaisons here at College Now with the different colleges and universities, so I will check in on that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, I just had a question. So the April 1st is to deadline. The people that sign up for mentoring are focused on new people to the program that will be starting in the fall. So existing kids that are already in the program already have mentors, or how does that work?
Yes. We have every active student with us who's receiving a scholarship, and even some who might be taking some time off of school. Everybody's matched. So we're not trying to fill any gaps that we need urgently right this second. It's more thinking about down the road and next year. We're gearing up now to be able to, have those matches for our incoming freshman class.
And what's your anticipated size of that upcoming class that is it 200 or so, or what's the?
Well, so College Now's dollars, yes, it would be around 200 students, but with Say Yes, it is essentially the limit is how many high school graduates in CMSD want to go to college and choose a Say Yes school, so a public college or university here in Ohio. We are projecting probably around 800 incoming students. But it is not, it's not really a sure thing. Especially these days, as we're seeing a lot of flex with the pandemic in terms of our students thinking this is a worthwhile investment for them, and so we're trying to make the best predictions we can. But we're hoping as the pandemic does start to kind of let up and students do, get more back into a more quote unquote normal routine in high school as well. We will see a lot of rebound there. So hopefully one day we'll be sitting here telling you we're going to have 1,500 incoming freshmen. And, the idea of Say Yes is more and more students will be going to college.
Any other questions? Madeline, any questions for us? You've heard our early presentations. Anything that was not included in your presentation that you think relates to the work we're doing that you'd want to bring forward?
Well, I do salute you all for having such an impressive outlook. And I think it's, I do a lot of these presentations at companies and sometimes do get to attend meetings like this, but really great the way that you all are coming together and sharing this information. And certainly, if you could keep us in mind in ways, if you feel that there's programming opportunities for things that you're doing, if there are outreach opportunities for us. Again, we fit in a couple different spaces. We are that leadership development piece for younger staff or newer staff. But we're also, in that DEI space of trying to change outcomes for local students. So, just bearing that in mind, economic development as well, we kind of fit into that bucket. The more degreed folks we can graduate here, the better off we'll all be. So yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity there, and please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I know Lenora helped set this up today. Shiva and I have had conversations, so several of you do have my information. Please feel free to share it and use it, and we're happy to collaborate.
So if I could put a plug in for the process, in my announcements, I shared that we would be releasing this Pay for Success procurement. I don't know the entirety of who's on the plan holder list that will receive announcement of that procurement. I do know that College Now is on it. And I just want to acknowledge that when organizations come forward and they register with the county and they ask to receive notices and announcements of future funding opportunities, we do our part, that we then follow up with those organizations and invite them to submit a proposal. So I know at times that process may not be as intuitive to the public when they haven't worked with us in the past. That's changing. And more importantly, I think much is done to make sure that the public knows about these opportunities and that there are relationships that develop out of that start to connect the dots. So this has been a great presentation. I don't think there's any other questions. And so, Madeline, you're always welcome to continue on and watch us. Also understand if you've got other meetings to get to or other affairs to address. We'd also understand if you sign off.
Yes. Yes. And I apologize again for my overzealous children, but they love making cameos on my meetings. They didn't realize this was a more, external meeting today. But
not speaking for the commission or in my official role, but I have children. Many of us have children. We've all been there. We've all done that. Nothing to apologize for.
Thank you. All right. Well, thanks, everyone.
Thanks. So we're going to move on now. I think our next update is around the diversity, equity, and inclusion training. Lenora?
Yes, thank you. So I just wanted to provide an update on the training. As you know, we have the contract that was approved by Tri-C January 10th. We have a strong weekly project team that meets with HR with Tri-C that includes HR, Clerk Birds, with Clerk of Council Clerk of Courts for the as liaison for the case. We meet weekly to make sure that the project is proceeding. As you mentioned, Lindy, that yesterday was the completion of the focus groups. There were 5 focus group meetings. There was one on the 3rd, 2 on March 15th, and 2 yesterday. The other component of that focus, the stakeholders analysis, was interviews with 3 executive leaders in the county. Those were completed. The next step is that they'll prepare a summary or report with the recommendations and findings on how to customize the training for the county based on what feedback and input they received from the interviews of the 3 leaders and also from the 5 focus group meetings. For our group, that's where the main external view or the actual above the iceberg above the portion above the water begins. First, there will be management training for supervisors and above. That's currently estimated a little over 700. That will occur starting in May. So they'll spend late March, April, tailoring and customizing the training. So in May, that training, and in May and June will be the training for the 700 plus supervisors. There will also be, starting in late June, early July through November, will be the training for the 4,500 plus staff. Also, we've been working with communications, so to try to make sure we have a plan on providing information to the 4,500 and 700 plus people on what's coming, what the next step is, so that they're aware of what the overall project plan is and scope, and also as each phase comes, what component affects them and how they'll know and what information they'll be provided. So it's going to take a county-wide effort. As I stated, we already have the people on the team. We have communications, and also we're going to be working with Department of IT because there's a large population of county employees that do not have county-issued laptops and PCs, especially a significant portion in the Sheriff's Department. So we're going to come up with a plan on, while Tri-C is providing the training virtually, we still have to provide a means for those employees to get to a county building or facility, either using computers or laptops. So we'll be trying to look at your West Shore area timing, things of that sort. Looking at all the resources to make sure that we can make even the employees that do not have county-issued laptops and PCs get a similar experience with the training. The other component, which I'll bring up if we get to the next agenda, is that as the Equity Commission, this is one of the things that we should push. The goal is to have all employees under the county executive's authority complete the training that's pertinent to their role. So if they're general staff, they make sure that they complete the training that's related to that population, and also management completes their additional or focused training also. So in addition to the communication plan, we're part of the communication plan, and obviously in our role driving the culture for the training.
Questions for Lenore?
Lenore, do you have maybe a preview of what the training curriculum is going to look like in terms of topics,
Well, I can
subjects, stuff like that?
So we have the RFP that has the overview that was provided by Tri-C. As part of the report from the stakeholders analysis, they will tailor it and customize the training, but there's a base of that I can definitely share.
Lenore, you mentioned that you're considering how to provide access to the education for employees who don't have computers. Are you also considering essential employees, for example, employees who can't divert their attention from their core job duties? I heard you say it's going to be a virtual training. Is it going to be a live training? Or is it recorded?
Yes, so.
Okay, so like we have 911 call takers who have a shift, can't, corrections officers, how those employees will access, is that being considered?
Yes, so again, our goal is, for instance, with the general staff training, is that there will be 3 training sessions in series, and each training session will be offered at 7 different times. And our goal is, as we develop those times, is to take into account different shifts. So we are at this point gathering data. So for instance, we're going to schedule a meeting with the sheriff, because similarly, 24/7 operations might be Sunday through Thursday. Obviously, if you're out on patrol or on duty as a corrections officer, you can't be on a computer doing training. So yes, we are looking into opportunities of having a variety of times for each training session, so that hopefully that variety of times will provide the opportunity that meets someone's schedule.
Okay, if you could please put public safety and justice services on that list. We have we're a much smaller operation, but we have a 24/7 operation. Pardon.
Yes.
Thank you.
And, excuse me, just to address your concern, when I worked at the Federal Reserve Bank, I worked 3rd shift. So I have a heart for 3rd shift, and employees who sort of get left off, not intentionally, but it's 3rd shift. You go to work, you go home. So Lenore's group is already, so Public Works was already on their list, and it was one of the first groups we thought about when we thought about who is it that may not have regular access to this, and how do we make sure we make it available, not because we do something different just because we're doing something different, but because they're important as well, and we want them to know they're not getting a second-hand training, they're getting what everybody else gets, just at a different venue. So, yeah, she jumped up on that, like, okay, who's missing? That was her first question. Who's missing? How do we get to them?
Definitely.
So, yeah.
And if you could, Lindy, if
So-
you could send me the contact person.
I was just gonna say that.
That's the information that we need. Where, one of the things Vaughn always brings up is learning what other departments do. You have an idea, but you don't really know, and you can inadvertently miss a whole population and have a negative impact on the perception of their importance. So definitely. And similarly, again, we're not the experts on every agency, so we're trying to gather that information. If there's people that we need to contact, that's why we're trying to start, that's why we're meeting weekly, so that we can, as things come up, it might trigger something, we can make sure we address it. And also we're trying to engage different parties to make sure that there's a maximizing the impact.
Well, it sounds you're gonna offer many opportunities to participate in the training, which is good news.
So Lenora, I think as you've described this and you've described the equity zone impact work, I have this sense that your office, although new, is up and running, getting a lot of work done. Are there things you need from us? And within the teams we have, I know you're working closely with HR, but are there other areas where you could benefit from having additional support? You don't have to answer that now, but just know it's a standing offer. I think some of us have larger departments with more staff. We're all busy. We're all working through the vacancy issues that we have, but I think at the same time this is important. And if you see the need for extra project management or extra all hands on deck or some priority assignment of space, please don't hesitate. It's important work, and I just see that you're taking a lot and you're doing a lot and you're running with it, and we all want to support you.
I appreciate it. Thank you, and I will follow up.
Great, great. I think I volunteered all of us. So, all right. Any other questions for Lenora on the diversity, equity, and inclusion training? All right, I think we're going to move on to our final scheduled item as we approach the final 7 minutes of our meeting, 2020 Equity Commission objectives.
So one of the things that we had started talking about at the last meeting, just for us to discuss, how do we overall as a group want to keep pushing overarching components for the Equity Commission. And one of the things has always been, we've been pilot agencies for two reports now. And one of the recommendations is always, or questions is always, when do we roll it out? And I know we're still at for various reasons, this is a very interesting but eventful year. Everyone's still keeping their momentum, and there's a lot of things that could change by this time next year, but we still want to keep the momentum for equity and inclusion for the county and meet those objectives. So one of the things I thought about as we talked about objectives was that we do have this training, that mass training that's going to increase our overall base of understanding on racial equity and inclusion. Also, as part of the training, one of the components that they're pushing as part of the training is that instead of, in addition to learning concepts, language, terminology, is that departments and management come away with a project for their department. So I thought that's a great opportunity as part of this training, that be the way to inaugurate or drop people in the pool, jump them in a pool for the equity work. Because you're going to get the training, and it's going to be opportunities, which we're doing as pilot groups, where we give a report where we talk about what our department does, what we're working, how we're working to improve equity, and what are some initiatives we want to do in the upcoming year. This training can provide that opportunity for the non-pilot agencies to, hey, get the training, bring their assessment and understanding level, and also they're going to get opportunity to create a project that deals with their department. And that would be a good way to start them on the road as part of being part of the overall equity reporting plan. And I was looking at also, one of the goals is that part of it is just part of that equity initiative is pushing to make sure all your department employees and staff understand the importance of the training, and that could be also part of that initial equity report for the non-pilot agencies.
Got it. Questions on this? So I had just a couple thoughts, couple questions. I don't know that we have to resolve this now, and I don't. We'll have time to see it all the way through. I'm not clear yet if the equity training will be a mandatory training this year, or what the plan is on how we require that moving forward, especially given some of the discussion about some essential staff may have a harder time accessing it. I am mindful as a director that every year we have an ethics training, and to be frank, unfortunately, at times some of our staff struggle to get it done. And I think that's a challenge, and then, you know, this is a clear requirement of employment with the county, and yet we still experience that in some way. And I feel like there is a point here worth discussion. Maybe you can't have it now. If we mandate this as an organization, it sort of takes a tone. If we offer this and we ask for participation, that takes a separate tone. Shiv, I don't know if there's any you can share on this at this point, because I think you make a statement either way you go.
I agree. No, I don't have sort of a real solid opinion on it, but I understand with the ethics training that it has to be mandatory. I don't know about this yet. I think we should talk more about it. It is a priority. Yes,
For not achieving it, which, as we talked about.
yeah.
But the goal is that it should be, unless there's a reason.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so is it a goal with teeth or is it a mandate? And I think that's an important issue for us to have some just consideration on. I think we should be thinking about it and making a recommendation, or at least getting involved in the discussion.
I absolutely agree.
So I'd ask that we give that some thought. I think the only other thing I'd like to add to the concept of these objectives, I'm left reflecting on the county will have, in a short period of time, from 2020 to 2024, spend $500 million in response to COVID. And, we'll have had two $240 million allocations. And I'm left questioning how much equity impact we've had. And I think it's worth giving some consideration to, are the procurements that are still to come, are the services that are yet to be funded or are still in development, are we capturing information on how they address the equity goals and the disparate impact of COVID on our community? So it's not a well-formed thought in terms of a specific objective or goal, but it's just a recognition that this county is really been invested in by the federal government. We've made this a priority for us, and I believe we should prioritize it in how we implement our response to COVID.
Definitely.
So those were my thoughts on objectives. Did others have other thoughts? So I think maybe we elevate this and bring this back at the next meeting. Lenore, I think when we discussed, we're also having the work group tackle this to some extent. Is that right?
They meet in April.
Wonderful. So we could elevate this towards the top of the agenda for the next meeting. I think the reality would be that would be a meeting in May for 2022 objectives.
Right.
So we might need to give it some thought about the
Okay.
timeline for those
Sounds
implementation.
good. I think that's great.
Any other thoughts on this? All right, with our waning moments here, closing remarks. I'll turn to Lenora first. We'll go left to right on this. Any closing remarks?
Just ready
Yeah,
to keep working. I'm excited, but it's a lot of moving parts.
yeah,
But I welcome like all the input, because we want to make sure that it's not for instance, specifically the training, and equity in general is not something someone does to us. It's something that we all are supposed to have as part of our operations and actions. It should be part of that evaluation. So it takes a lot of work to all the different things that every component, each of us is doing. It helps add that as part of making it embedded in our processes. So it's exciting, but it's a lot of work to change culture.
I agree.
I just want to add that, yeah, I enjoy working with Lenora. It's been a lot of fun. This project is so exciting. I can hardly wait for the training to come out and see the dynamics, but I really enjoy the reports that I get from every department when I get here. We're all so busy and we don't always get a chance to talk to each other separate and away from these meetings. So thank you for your reporting, because I really enjoy what I hear when I am in these meetings from other areas.
Great. I'm going to go last, so I'll skip and then come back. Vaughn?
Yeah, again, I continue to be encouraged by the work that with this group. Also, I feel like we are playing offense. We are acting versus reacting. I love the fact that we're playing offense around this issue and not just reacting and responding to stimuli that force us to react. So again, I'm encouraged. I like the fact that we're playing offense. Let's score some touchdowns.
Yeah, I agree with what Lenora said. There is a lot to be done, but I think it's doable this year. I'm glad to hear that the survey is getting underway earlier rather than later, because I think that's going to be an important source of information for the administration. I think employees want to express themselves and have a voice on these issues. And I would also like to. I'm glad that someone from communications is here, because I'm happy that's happening around the education project, but I think it needs to happen on a wide-scale basis around what the expectations are for all departments. I know we have 5 pilots, but I'm ready to see this, you know, in all departments. I was really glad to hear that a department project is part of the education. You know, I'm hoping that we're also thinking through what the support will be, any technical assistance that can be provided to departments that might need help in implementing these types of initiatives. Just something to consider, so.
So I want to amplify Sheba's statements about hearing how other programs are doing. I feel like I'm in contact with you individually frequently, but I think there's a lot of value of having us come together as a group to talk about these. I get a lot out of it. I want to also just acknowledge the great work of our Human Resource Department as they've been doing a lot of on-site hiring fairs, responding to the priorities. I do feel this is an unprecedented time with the amount of vacancies we have, the opportunities we're presenting to the community and residents for employment. You know, I think we offer good jobs at good wages. Things are getting better. And I need to point out that HR is doing their part with just opening the door, having people walk through and walk out with a job in hand. So great work, Sheba, to you and your team for that. And I think as we move forward, I think any way that we can move forward together is something we should absolutely be considering. So I feel much better hearing from each of you, and I'm always happy to support your work as well. So with that, is there a motion to adjourn? Is there a second?
A second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, we're adjourned.
Aye.
Thanks.